Welcome to another Smart Digital Workshop where we stay motivated and rise together by engaging in real conversations that enhance your personal and professional brand. My name is Dr. Theo Fowles, and I'm joined by my co-facilitator, Dr. Jaqui Thomas. In this episode, we'll be discussing issues undergraduate students face around learning abilities and styles. Our guest today is Dr. Juliana Calhoun. Juliana is the Assistant Director and Learning Specialist at the Korshak Center for Learning and Creativity. At the KCLC, she helps to support students that learn differently by working on their study skills and habits, as well as helping them to succeed and learn to the best of their ability. She has a background in curriculum development, program assessment, and training programs as well. Juliana graduated through the EDD program in educational psychology at USC, her master's in marriage and family therapy and PBS credential also from USC. She holds a BA in psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. So we're really excited to have you here today, Juliana.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. The first question that we have is to describe your pathway to the role that you currently have, and what would you say is the typical route in your field or profession?
Yeah, I think my position I currently have the Assistant Director at the Korshak Center for Learning and Creativity is super unique because our center is very unique across the country and the world. So there isn't necessarily a typical path to fall into this. Everyone I know that seems to work in disability services or works with students in a capacity related to disability and learning, they kind of just fall into it somehow, usually involving mentors or jobs they had when they were getting a master's or getting a doctorate. And that's kind of what happened to me. I started working with one of my mentors, Dr. Toby, as a graduate student doing assessment with her when I was getting my master's in marriage and family therapy. And then from there, they ended up opening a center for assessment, so I started working with her, and then she also was overseeing the Korshak Center for Learning and Creativity at the time, and so she was able, when they ended up needing to hire on a second person, she definitely recommended me, and so I was able to fall into that role pretty easily from my background working with students and then also my background in marriage and family therapy. I would say, at least for this field, kind of the typical route, even though it may not be you have this job and have this job and have this job, I think what ends up happening is people kind of start to develop a passion for working with students that either have a learning difference or a documented disability, and start to realize that there's a lot of information and a lot of things that need to happen for these students, and they don't necessarily always have the support that they need.
So are there any professional organizations you would suggest being a part of this field that stepping into the field, these are the go-to organizations that provide some expertise around learning and design and working with students that have ways of learning differently?
I would definitely say there's a good number of professional organizations. From the psychologist lens, I always recommend APA, so American Psychological Association. If you are a student, they have a very cheap student package. I think it's $50 a year, or it's under $100 for the membership for the year. And they have amazing listservs and just articles and things to get you really diving deep into the field. And since APA is so broad, they have, I can't even count, probably 50 or 60 divisions of different types of psychology that you're able to go through and find. They have an ed psych one, they have one related to disability, so you're able to kind of dive deeper and learn from those people as well. Within the realm of disability, there's a lot of organizations. I would say one of the important ones is AHEAD, which is kind of the interaction between disability and working in higher education. Again, they have a very strong listserv with a lot of information. I think they're a great organization. If you're looking more at kind of learning disability specific and kind of ADHD, there's an organization called CHADD, CHADD. Again, another great listserv and a great group of people that do a lot of training and a lot of learning. And then there's a very informal listserv called DISHY. And you can just Google it, and it's literally a link you email and they get you on the list. They do a lot of education, but one thing I love about DISHY is it's disability professionals around the country. And so what happens is they email for kind of help. Oh my gosh, I have this case about a service animal, and this person needs a service animal and an emotional support animal. How do I deal with this? Stuff about advocating for students. And so it's a good way to learn, because there's people on that listserv that do a good job of replying that are very law-based. Like, this is what the law says, and here's what this decision says. And it's very interesting it's a great way to be able to learn that quickly. But also just to hear about all the different cases that people are dealing with, and how different departments and different schools and different settings, whether it be 2-year or 4-year, really get to delve deep into some of these issues. And I would say I also do like teaching as well. So teaching graduate students. And so one of the really good organizations I found is called WPA. It's the Western Psychological Association. And so it's all about mentoring and helping students, whether they're undergraduate or graduate, whether in a research capacity or in a teaching capacity. So it's a really good way to get involved in that realm as well.
We often pose the hypothetical question of what advice would you give yourself if you were entering the field today?
I would say, since like most people I know, we just kind of fell into this. I mean, if I start to really reflect back on, I took AP psychology in high school and then majored in psychology. And, I've been studying psych for a good 15 years of my life now. I was always drawn toward classes involving the DSM and how to diagnose people and what happens when you get diagnosed, and how people that are diagnosed just learn differently. I'd always been interested in that. And so it's really not a surprise to me now, reflecting back, that I am where I am. So I would say, for someone getting started in the field, really following your interest. So if you decide, I do want to be a psychologist, I do want to help people in this realm, really looking at, when you're getting, you're taking a Psych 1 class, or you're taking that intro to psych, which are the units that interest you? Are you super interested in the social psych part? Are you interested in the mental health part? Are you interested in diagnosis? Are you interested more in kind of the brain and like the biological basis, and kind of follow your passion that way, and really start to look at within that, especially on a college campus, you can really find great mentors in faculty, because a lot of them do research, they know people, they have graduate students. So it's a good way to try out different things and get super, super connected. And I would also say, no matter what, keep that love of learning. Even like I said, APA has been great for me to join. They have great articles and listservs. They send out basically a news roundup on Fridays that has any link to psychology, or any link to an article they published, or any member that's an APA member. And it's literally an email you get that have 60 links a week of news from Time, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, blogs, and it'll say, this is on here, here's what it says, and this person who's an APA member is quoted. This references a study that we published in the social psych branch. And so it's a great way to learn a lot and stay really up to date on the field, because this field is changing very rapidly, and it can be, unfortunately, easy to fall into the trap of not doing your research and not staying up. And so you can basically get behind the curve, and you're always trying to stay innovative and stay ahead of the curve. And I would say exploring all opportunities. So any job offers you get, any internships, anybody you meet, going to conferences, networking, talking to people, and just kind of trying to see any collaborations you can make, any mentoring. So just kind of being open to the whole process, I think, would be a huge thing I would recommend to someone.
Perfect. Now, this is always an interesting question to ask, but one that's really important. Mm-hmm. What do you wish other higher ed professionals knew about your role or job, and how do you think professionals within the field can collaborate with you better?
I would say, for what happens a lot is our office gets mistaken for being disability services. So a student will get referred to us and saying, well, they may have a disability, I don't know, they just need extra time, can you help them? And that's not necessarily what we do. So what we do is really work with the student to come up with an individualized learning plan. How best do you learn? What do you need to put in place to learn? And if you do actually have a diagnosis, then yes, let's look at all of the individual stuff along with the accommodations and the importance of accommodations. I would say within the disability field in general, a lot of faculty and staff have a misunderstanding of what an accommodation is. An accommodation is basically a way to level the playing field for students that need it. And so, yes, I understand for faculty, if you have a lecture of 300 people and you have 10 students that need double time, so instead of the exam taking an hour, they now need 2 hours to take it, that can be a burden on you to figure out how that will work, but it is to the benefit of the student, and the student will very much benefit from that accommodation. And I would say too, just in general, the importance of what I do a lot of work on time management, organization, and those things, and those are lifelong skills. And so, yes, it may sound like, oh, you're just sitting down and helping a student with the calendar, but it's a lot more than that, because if organization was easy, then everyone would be organized. And we know for college students especially, they're not. And so my office is there to help them get through that, help them learn what works for them. And then hopefully in the future, they're able to really, you know, when they go out and get a job, really be able to understand how to stay organized, how to not miss deadlines, and all of that. That's always what I tell students. I'm like, listen, I understand you're in this hard bio class and that's what you're stressing about. For me, what is important is that when you get out, you learn the skills now. So when you go to college, get out of grad school, get a job, you're not going to get in trouble because you don't know how to, you know, monitor your deadlines or answer emails correctly, and all of those lifelong skills. And at least within the field, I think it's really important to be very self-reflective. And so understanding that if you are going to be teaching these skills, you really do need to understand it. And because it's so individualized, it's not something that you can just learn. We've had a department reach out to us and say, oh, we want to do what you do. Can we meet with you for an hour and you train us? Not realizing that this is my career. I have a doctorate in this stuff. This isn't something that you can necessarily learn in an hour, that it does take a lot of research and practice and learning, because you can tell someone, oh, just make a calendar. It's fine. Just here's a blank calendar. Just make it. You'll be good. Not understanding that each student is an individual, and you have to be able to understand where the student's at, how to meet them where they're at, how to help them figure out what the issue is for why this calendar is not working when they can't even articulate it, and then also help them figure out what's the best way to go about this so that they can be successful. And I would say, at least for faculty, we work a lot with faculty and collaborate with them, helping them understand that I understand as faculty, you can do whatever you want, but for students, a very organized syllabus and an organized class structure is helpful, not just for students with a disability. It's helpful for all students. So if you do have PowerPoint slides, posting them, that yes, that helps the student that may need to use a screen reader or need to use, you know, text to speech, but it also helps every other student because now they have the notes that you went over in class to go back to. So kind of those universal design of instruction and universal design of learning concepts that I think a lot of people reject because it sounds easy. And it is easy, but the issue with it is, especially in a class setting, to have a true UDL, UDI class, it takes a lot of prep work, lots and lots of hours spent updating syllabi, making sure they're accessible, making sure you have the homework planned out. And so I think that's why a lot of people may shy away from it, because it is so difficult. But just knowing that that's something that someone like myself can help with. I can help train faculty on UDL and UDI and help them not feel so overwhelmed. But in the end, it's all about the students and the student success. And so even though it may seem like, oh, this is such a bore, it's so much, that little bit of work you can put in before the class can not only help the students with disabilities, it can help all students too.
Well, let's get a little more specific to your area. What are the demographics of students who are currently using your services?
Yeah, so at the CoreCheck Center, we technically can serve any undergraduate or graduate student through our drop-in hours. So what we've done over the past few years is expand our drop-in hours. It's exactly like they sound. We have usually 2 hours a day, so all 5 days of the week, where students can just come in. They just come to the front desk during that time and say, hey, I'm here for a drop-in, and we have staff that's ready to help them. So instead of having a workshop on time management, a student can just come in and say, I have a paper due. Let me help. You know, I just need help. I have a test next week. What do I do? And so right now we've been doing a big push on that. And so we've seen close to 200 or 300 students, individual students over the semester, which in past semesters, we used to see 30 to 40. And so we still got 6 weeks left. So plus finals. So we got a lot of time to get more students in. We're really trying to shoot to reach either, we would love to hit 400, 500 would be the stretch goal. But that's undergraduate and graduate. We also have an academic coaching program where what we do is, this is for the students that really need that one-on-one assistance. And so they usually have a diagnosed disability and they get matched with a coach. All of our academic coaches are trained graduate students in the School of Education. So this is kind of like their field work per se, because they want to go out and work with college students. And so within that program, we can usually see about 125 students, but that's per week. And so there's people that transition in and then decide they don't want to do it, or transition in and transition out. So we can usually see around 200 students per semester. And I would say another big thing that we've been doing is our outreaches. So we've been matching up with courses. And so going into OT classes, going into freshman seminar classes and talking about stress management, time management. We've done events with RAs because they're required to have an academic program per semester. And so we always tell them, hey, if you're gonna have your students come, you better have food. So they'll feed them dinner and we'll talk about how to prep for finals or how to prep for midterms. And so we're getting, you know, to reach a lot more students than we have in the past. And overall, I would say our demographics, we track them. We see all years, so everyone, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, graduate student. We see all races and ethnicities. We see all sexual orientations, all types of demographics. So we have a nice cross-section of USC students. And I definitely think with some of our collaborations that we've done, like we did one with CBCSA, we did one with APAS, that we're able to really target some of the groups that may struggle more. Even within our office, we're doing a first gen group right now. We've talked about maybe in the spring doing a transfer student group or a transfer student outreach, just to kind of help those groups of students that may be struggling more than the typical USC student.
And for our non-USC folks, can you tell us what CBCSA and APAS are?
Yes, those are two of our 4 cultural centers that we have on campus. So one is for students that identify as Black, and the other one, APAS, is for students that identify as Asian. So, and always, even though that's the primary audience that they serve, within those outreaches that we've done, it's open to every student. So people are more than welcome to just come in, wander in, and kind of get the help that they need.
Wonderful, thank you. So what are the biggest transitional challenges between K through 12 and higher ed that you see when you consider learning styles and learning abilities?
Oh, the transition that everyone is always talking about. I would say the biggest thing that we see from K through 12 to higher ed is the switch from teacher focused and parent focused to student focused. So for a lot of students, K through 12 is very structured, especially your senior year. You go to class when I was in high school, we went to school from 7:30 to 2:30. That was our class time. And then you had band practice or choir practice or rehearsal or something. And so you got home at 6 o'clock. You had dinner, you either went to a study group or studied on the phone with people, all of those types of things. It's a very structured environment. A lot of people have, rules that their parents have. You have to go to bed by this time, you have to wake up, you need to leave for class by this time, or you're gonna be late, all of these kind of rules. And so a lot of students really struggle when they get to college and realize, oh, I have time to do what I want, and I wanna just relax. Oh my gosh, I'm making great friends, and for the first time in my life, I live with them. My best friend lives on my floor. He or she doesn't live, 10 minutes, 20 minutes away. And so for a lot of students, that can be a big struggle of learning how to manage their time, because in high school, they never really got the opportunity to plan out, maybe a little bit, but not, hardcore. I'm going to take this class, and then I have a 2-hour break, and I'm gonna take this class. And then tomorrow, I just have one class. And then deciding, do I want a job? Am I gonna join a club? And I would say, within K through 12, lots of things happen within the school day and then right after school. Something I'm starting to realize when working with students, student groups and club meetings, they usually don't happen until 10 or 11 at night because it's the only time that students are free. So if we're talking about self-care and what time they're going to bed, they're like, well, I got this club meeting at 10. And you're like, wait, what? Like, which is very different for them to have that, you know, very broad structure, and that everything changes a lot per day. And that you have students struggle too because they figure it out their freshman year, fall semester of their freshman year. I'm going to go to bed this time. I'm going to wake up. It's going to be great. Second semester comes, class schedule is completely different. They decide to get a job. That's different. They're trying to get an internship. And so they worked so hard and they have to do it all over again the next semester. So that kind of flexibility can be really difficult for students. And I think just having so much more free time. So I've noticed with a lot of my current students on my caseload, they're starting to realize that they have to stay busy. So they're joining clubs, they're getting jobs, because if they put a little bit more structure in their day, then, you know, if they're busy from 9 to 5 and then they have a sorority meeting and then they have other things going on, when they have to study from 7 to 9, that's the only time they do it. Versus if they have 12 to 4 free and then 7 to 9, they're like, I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to relax. 7 o'clock comes around there. Well, technically, I don't have to go to bed at 10. I could go to bed at midnight. And so then they don't start their homework till later. It takes longer. And so really working with students on how not to procrastinate is a huge thing and a huge difference from K through 12. I think for a lot of students too, depending on their high school environment, high school may have been easy for them. Maybe not completely easy, but they go to USC, they're very intelligent, so they were able to get through homework and classwork pretty easily. So they could do it, you know. I've heard of some students that are like, I used to do my homework in the class before and all of this stuff. They get to USC, you get to college, it's very different. Classes they move at a faster pace. You know, each faculty is different. Each faculty has different expectations. And so they can really struggle with the differences of kind of expectations as well. And I would say one other misnomer is a lot of students will say, well, I can just multitask. I'm so good at it. I can like text on the phone and I can have the TV on and watch whatever show I'm watching. And I can also read. Oh, I'm going to have music going too. And it's like, well, no, just in general, most people can't multitask. The research supports that all you're basically doing is task switching. So your brain is switching from all these different capacities. And so all that's doing is making you do two things poorly versus taking longer to do them versus just trying to focus on one thing at a time. And I think that's really hard for students because they're like, oh, I can do this all. And then realizing, oh, they actually can't multitask as much as they think. And even with the concept of learning styles, I think what happens for a lot of students is we're told at some point, you're a kinesthetic learner, you're a visual learner. And the research doesn't really support that. And I would say even, you know, from a psychology point of view, APA has basically gone on the record to say, we don't support any teaching involving learning styles. This is not good for the field. If people are doing it, they have to stop because each thing that you're learning can be learned in multiple modalities, but also that, let's say you're a kinesthetic learner and you take art history. Well, you can be kinesthetic as much as you want, but for art history, at some point you have to become a visual learner to learn all the different paintings, and you're gonna have to read to learn all the different artists. And so really having students kind of pigeonholed in that isn't so good when they get to college when things are really, really different. And so for a lot of students, I always say, think of it more as like learning ability and what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. Like for example, myself, I have a very good memory. And so I don't have to take notes. I notice this in my office a lot. I don't have to take notes in meetings. I just remember. But other people don't have as good a memory. So they know I have to take notes. I have to outline what I need to do. Some people will use their phones. They realize, you know, a to-do list is better on my phone. One thing I like to do is I make a to-do list before I leave my office. If I think of something while I'm home, I'll actually just email myself. That's my way. But some people may just have a to-do list running on their phone, may have a paper to-do list. And so really thinking of different kind of strengths and abilities and what to do. So if you do realize I don't remember when stuff is due, trying out different things. Do you want a paper calendar? Do you want a planner? Do you want an online calendar? Do you need an app that's going to alert you? And so really analyzing how you are and realizing you're an individual. And so what works for your friend or your mom or your cousin may not work for you. But being willing to try different things and trying to figure out, okay, I need to be better at keeping a list of what I need to do. here's 5 ways for me to do that. Okay, let me try all 5 and see what works and see what I'm actually going to do. And that takes time. And so a lot of students are like, no, I don't have time to figure this out. Just tell me what to do. What calendar do I need? What do I, how should I study? How do I get through all this reading? And helping them realize like, hey, this is a process and it's going to take a long time, or maybe not. Hopefully if you put the work in, it won't take that long, but just knowing it's going to take time. It's not an instant fix. And so I think for a lot of students, especially from a K through 12 environment, they come from teachers saying, do your outline like this, write this essay like this. Get to college, professors may not say that, and so they can kind of feel lost in the shuffle. So I think overall, to kind of summarize, just understanding that college is very different because you have a lot more time. But with that time, you can do good things. You can join clubs that you want to join. You can get the internship you've always dreamed of. You can do the research you've always wanted to do. And understanding that no matter what goes into your schedule, if you decide this is, this club's important, that it needs to go in your schedule, that there may be a little bit of give and take, and that this whole process of becoming a successful college student may just take time.
So what do you think about the transitions for our more non-traditional students, our transfer students, our graduate students, re-entry potentially, the older students?
Yeah, I would say for, the typical kind of non-traditional student, they have the same thing, especially transfers, older students, veterans. We see a lot of veterans at USC, where they have all the same transitions, but they can have other things going on. They may feel out of place because feel like they're older. They may have, taken a break from school and coming back. And so they may have more personal responsibilities. There may be other things going on. And so whenever I work with those types of students where they kind of get nervous, I have kids, or I have this, or I have that, I always tell them, it doesn't matter. It's the same strategies. It doesn't matter if it's a kid or a club. If it's important, we put it in the schedule. But understanding that if that's important, there may be sacrifices along the way. And so the sacrifice may be, you have your kid's soccer game on Saturday. That's a non-negotiable. You're going to that. That's in the schedule. What that may mean, you got to get up at 6 o'clock on Saturday to study. Or that may mean after your kid goes to bed, you may have to stay up till midnight instead of going to bed at 9 to get through that reading. And so all of it is flexibility, and really I would always say having the person really understand, this is important to me. It needs to get in there in my schedule to make sure that it happens. I would say, especially with graduate students, that transition back to a classroom can be very difficult, especially if you went to a different institution. It's been 5-10 years. I always think about when I started my master's program, I went straight in from my bachelor's, got my master's. Half of us went straight in within a year of graduating. The second half of us came back. And I remember I sat down with one of my classmates that, I think she was in her early 40s at the time. And she was like, I don't understand Blackboard. She's like, I don't know what this is. I've never dealt with this. Can you just help? I don't know what we do. I don't know how to log in. And so just even asking for help, I think is so, so crucial. Just saying, I don't know, someone help me. So either, getting a buddy in class, asking a professor, asking an advisor, and just knowing that it will be different from however your bachelor's was. But I always say, look at the positives too. Like the thing I loved about grad school, master's, and doctorate was that in undergrad, you take all these classes. You're in classes with 500 people, 300 people, freshmen, you're all these people, which is great. You can meet people, but it's so cool to go to a class where you're all interested and believe the same thing. You're in a school of education getting a master's because you believe education is important and you want to help people. And you're in a small class of 30 and everyone's so excited. You get to take fieldwork classes where everyone's at different sites. And so you can learn about other school districts, other programs, other sites. So I always say that's the positives of it. But I do also think that just knowing that coming back, being a non-traditional student in whatever capacity that means to you, that there will be a little bit of a growth curve and a growth edge, and just understanding that you will also have to work like a typical undergraduate would, but you may have to work even a little harder. Maybe you've never taken online notes before. Maybe you've never used Blackboard. You've never done a study group. You're not used to these group meetings that happen at 9:30 at night. And so just understanding there may be adjustments, and to give yourself that grace and that time to adjust to it. And always knowing that if, you can't figure it out, there's departments. Like at USC, there's the Korchak Center. There's always, whatever school you're at, there's always a tutoring department. There's always your advisor. If you get confused, go meet with your advisor. Advisors like to meet with students. Go talk to them. They can connect you to resources. So I always remind students, don't ever feel like you're alone, because you're definitely the opposite of alone. People are here to help you. People are ready to help you. People want to help you. But I would say too, that idea of just whatever's on your plate, whether it's a spouse, a child, having to be a caregiver, whatever it is, working full time while going to school, whatever it is, it's great. It's fine. But you just need to make sure it gets in your schedule and know that there may be other sacrifices that have to happen.
Awesome. If only all the students knew these things, right?
I know. I'm always like, come in. Everyone wants to talk to you. I promise.
Okay. So our last question is, what more can institutions be doing to improve student retention and student learning? And if you have thoughts about what we could specifically be doing in particular to Black students, we would love to hear those as well.
Yes, I obviously think retention is very important, but I do think that overall universities need to understand that, you admit more students, no matter what category you want to put them in. More people are coming in, you're going to need more services. So you're going to need to hire more advisors, advisors need smaller caseloads. You're going to need learning centers like the Korchak Center. You're going to need people that are trained to help students figure this stuff out. You're going to need to train faculty on UDL and UDI, on universal design, so that they can implement it in their classes, so that students can benefit from it. And you're going to have to do a lot of marketing and pushing during orientation and throughout the school year of, here's all the services we have for you students. You're feeling anxious, go to this group. You're feeling anxious, go to the counseling center. You're feeling anxious, talk to your RA. All of these types of mental health issues that just keep coming up and up. Understanding that it takes a village. The village is the university, but you're going to have to hire more people to work in the village to take care of students. And I would say in general, anything that, students can just do to understand, even if it's just, you have to do all these trainings. You have to do alcohol EDU training, and you have to do sexual harassment, all these trainings. Maybe just throw in one, a short one for students that talks about how to thrive at a university. Here's all of these resources. Here is what you do when you feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel stressed. It's okay to feel anxious, to kind of help normalize what's happening. And I think that can also just help with retention. If students feel welcomed and students feel as if the school cares about them and that they have a place to go, going back to like retention theory, that as long as, as they feel more connected with the university, they're more likely to be retained. And I would say for Black students specifically, I think something that USC has been trying to do is really bring the Black staff and faculty together of, hey, we're all across campus. Here's what we do. You need a favor. Here's who you can talk to. You need to get to know this department. Here's who you can talk to. Because then what that does is that when students come to us and say, oh, I'm really struggling in this or struggling with that, they can, someone else on campus could say, hey, go talk to Dr. Calhoun in the Korchak Center. Here's her email. Go chat with her. She can understand some of what you're going through. So I think it helps for, connection on campus. I also think it helps for students to know that, whatever they're dealing with, I may have not specifically dealt with it, but someone in the staff or in the faculty has. And so if we can kind of build that family and build that community to help them feel connected, then I think that's always in the best interest of students. And especially for students that have a disability, there can be a lot of disability stigma on campus, whether that is intentional or not. Part of my dissertation is I did a lot of research on how disability is viewed on a higher education campus. And so I found some great studies that did qualitative studies asking students like, okay, you have a disability, why didn't you get registered with disability services? And a lot of students would talk about the stigma And they would go interview there. In that same study, they interviewed other students and faculty, and they didn't have the same stigma that the students with the diagnosed disability thought that they would have. And so there seems to be a disconnect with that, of just helping students get connected. Because if you need extra time, you need a reader, you need a scribe, you need some of these accommodations, and you're not getting them because you're worried about how will people view you, well, all that's doing is being a detriment to the student, that they're not able to get the services that they need. So even, you know, helping normalize some of that disability stigma on campus, and, you know, some of it comes back to just training faculty. Like, here's what you can say, here's what you should say. I know you have good intentions. Here's what you should say to help students with a disability feel welcome. Here's what has to go in your syllabus. Here's how you react to some of these accommodation requests. Can help students just feel more welcome and feel more like they belong, which is always, you know, in the best interest. Always back to student interest and helping them succeed, for sure.
We use two acronyms, UDL and UDI. What do those stand for?
So UDL and UDI come out of just universal design in general, which comes out of architecture. And so it's the idea that within architecture, making spaces accessible to as many people as possible. So for example, the example that always gets used within kind of architecture and city planning is the idea of curb cuts. Is so having a sidewalk that has, you know, that isn't just a curb, but kind of gradually goes down, basically as a ramp to the street, is helpful for people in wheelchairs, but it's also helpful for people with mobility issues, someone that has a shopping cart, someone that's pulling a suitcase. And so it's a small thing that happens, but it's beneficial for all. And so universal design of instruction, which is UDI, and universal design of learning, which is UDL, comes out of those concepts of making things easy to understand. So the example I always use in a classroom to be very universal design centric would be posting your syllabi on Blackboard, but also giving a written copy and reminding students, hey, you should also download it off Blackboard. Because some professors will just talk, hey, this is when stuff's due. Some won't even tell the students. So it can be varied. And so that way you get to hear it multiple ways. You hear it in lecture, you have it on your computer, you can access it off of Blackboard if you aren't on your computer. Another example is, I was talking about the syllabus one, and I'm trying to think of one other one. It's just the idea of how you teach. So if you do decide to use PowerPoint slides, that you use kind of the ed psych principles of not reading off of the slides. So not having a wall of text that you read, having it be photo-based, having it be bullet points, and then that way you just kind of expand on the points versus reading word for word, which can be very boring for students and cause them to kind of zone out. But also, if you are going to use PowerPoints, having them accessible on Blackboard before class so that students can download them and then either put them through a screen reader or a program if they're visually impaired or need to have that, but also so that students can download it. And then in the bottom of PowerPoint, there's the notes section. And so students could type their notes directly into the PowerPoint or type them directly onto the slide. And they also would have them for the future so that so students aren't having to write down every single word of what's happening. I know when I teach classes and I use PowerPoint slides, the Rossier department's great in that they'll actually print the slides for students too, because that can also be a barrier. So they're on Blackboard, you can download them, you can type it in. I also have a printed copy that you can write your notes on there. And so just multiple ways of having things and just making things very accessible to students so that they feel that, you know, they're learning, their interest is in learning. So that you're not having to ask the professor, oh, well, I missed class, like, where are the slides? Or, oh, it's been a month since we did this and I lost my notes, where are the slides, or those types of things. So it keeps everyone in the loop. And by doing that, a lot of that comes from accommodations. Some accommodations can involve having the slides beforehand so students can take notes on them. Some of them can involve, you know, just access to notes, having things online. And so if you just already do it, that's one less barrier for students that may need other accommodations as well. And let's say you need an interpreter or, you know, one of those things, any type, you know, if the interpreter can get the slides early or get the information or the papers early, that all it does is help them and help the student. So they're not having to do it on the fly.
This has been another episode in the Smart Digital Workshop series. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Calhoun, for your participation. This episode is going to be edited and shared across multiple platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and SoundCloud. And you will be the first to receive notice of its availability. And that is a wrap.